There are moments in life when the universe slaps you in the face with such force that you have no choice but to sit down and rethink every decision you've ever made. My moment arrived on an unremarkable Tuesday, disguised as an innocent-looking envelope sitting on my desk. To be clear, I wasn't expecting anything. No bills, no promotions, no mysterious inheritances from long-lost relatives. Just another soul-crushing day at the office, filled with emails that should have been phone calls and phone calls that should have been avoided altogether. But there it was, an envelope, plain and white, with my name scrawled across it in handwriting that had all the elegance of a ransom note. At first, I did what any sane person would do. I ignored it. Because nothing good ever starts with an unmarked envelope. Bills come with logos, lawsuits arrive in thick manila folders, and good news, well, good news doesn't come in envelopes at all. Good news comes in the form of a paycheck or an unexpected snow day. But then curiosity, that obnoxious little voice in my head, got the best of me. I picked it up, turned it over, and, before my common sense could intervene, ripped it open. Inside, there were photos. Now, let me tell you something. If you ever find yourself opening an envelope full of photos that you didn't ask for, assume the worst. No one has ever opened a mysterious package of pictures and thought, "Oh wow, memories." No, these things exist for one reason, to ruin your day. And boy, did they. Because staring back at me, in full color, high definition, was my wife, Amanda. And Amanda was not alone. She was with a man who was not me. A man who, unfortunately, I recognized immediately. I blinked, then blinked again, as if my brain needed time to process what my eyes were seeing. Maybe I was hallucinating. Maybe someone had spiked my coffee. Maybe I had unknowingly entered a parallel universe where things like this happened. Nope. Still there. Still real. Amanda. And my dentist. My dentist. The man who had spent the last 5 years telling me to floss more often. The man who had once complimented my strong enamel. The man who had quite literally drilled into my skull on multiple occasions. This was the man Amanda had chosen? I stared at the pictures, waiting for some logical explanation to present itself. Maybe they were discussing oral hygiene? Maybe he was showing her a new flossing technique that, for some reason, required full body contact? Maybe this was some kind of social experiment on the limits of my patience? The universe, as it turns out, was not feeling generous with explanations that day. There was no note inside, no instructions, just the cold, hard evidence that my wife was sneaking around with a man who knew way too much about my molars. I sat there, the weight of the moment pressing down on me, before finally exhaling a long, exhausted sigh. Well, I muttered to myself, flipping through the photos. At least now I know why she's been so invested in my dental insurance. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. This was going to be interesting. I spent the next hour staring at the photos, hoping, against all logic, that if I looked at them long enough, they would somehow change into something less infuriating, like a traffic ticket or a jury duty summons. But nope, still my wife, still my dentist, still engaging in activities that had nothing to do with teeth cleaning, unless that was some revolutionary new form of oral care I had somehow missed out on. At some point, I realized I was going to have to do something about this. But what? March into my dentist's office, slam the pictures down, and demand a refund on every filling he had ever given me? Show them to Amanda and watch her attempt some Olympic-level mental gymnastics to explain why she was half-dressed in a reclined dental chair with a man who wasn't me? No, that was too predictable, too basic. And if there was one thing I wasn't, it was basic. Instead, I did something that was actually productive. I picked up my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and scheduled a dentist appointment. The receptionist was way too cheerful for someone working in a place where people got their gums stabbed for a living. Dr. Miller's office. How can I help you? I cleared my throat, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. Yeah, I'd like to schedule a cleaning, preferably with Dr. Miller himself. It's been a while. Well, you're in luck. We had a cancellation for tomorrow afternoon. Would that work? Tomorrow. Perfect. That gave me enough time to figure out exactly how I wanted to play this. That works, I said. And tell him Peter Lawson is looking forward to it. I swear I could hear the smile in her voice. Wonderful. We'll see you then. Oh, you will. The next day, I left work early, went home, and got ready for my very special dentist appointment. I didn't wear anything fancy, just jeans and a t-shirt, but I did make sure to floss, because if I was going to confront the guy who had been sneaking around with my wife, I was at least going to have excellent gum health while doing it. When I arrived at the office, the waiting room was packed with the usual crowd of people who all looked equally thrilled to be there. I walked up to the receptionist, who greeted me with that same overly enthusiastic tone. Peter, right on time. Dr. Miller will be with you shortly. I smiled. Oh, I bet he will. After a few minutes, Dr. Miller himself appeared, all white coat and fake friendliness. Peter, long time no see. How's the flossing going? Oh, I said, standing up. Could be better. But that's actually not the most interesting thing about my life right now. He gave me a confused smile and gestured toward the hallway. Well, come on back, and we'll take a look. I followed him into the exam room, taking in the familiar surroundings. The same sterile smell. The same outdated posters about gum disease. The same chair where, presumably, my wife had been spending more time than necessary. Dr. Miller pulled on a pair of gloves. So, what's new? I leaned back in the chair, crossing my arms. Oh, not much. Work's been busy. Weather's been weird. Found out my wife's been seeing another man. You know, the usual. His hands froze for a fraction of a second before he recovered. Wow. That's terrible, man. I'm really sorry to hear that. Yeah, me too, I said, watching him carefully. But the really weird part? The guy she's seeing looks a lot like you. Crazy, right? He laughed. Actually laughed. Like I had just told him an amusing anecdote about a bad haircut. Well, that's unfortunate. I mean, I hope you're wrong about that. Oh, I wish I were, I said, reaching into my pocket and pulling out one of the photos. But I'm not really in the wishing business today. The second his eyes landed on the picture, his entire face did this amazing thing where it went through about 17 emotions in 3 seconds. Shock, fear, regret, and, my personal favorite, oh, man. I slid the photo across the counter toward him. Tell me, document, is this covered by my insurance, or should I be paying extra for this particular service? His mouth opened and closed a few times, like a fish gasping for air. Peter, listen. Oh, no, I interrupted. You don't get to listen your way out of this one. You do for a living, document. So go ahead. Do. Explain to me why my wife has been spending her free time getting a very thorough oral exam from the guy I've been trusting with my dental care for the last 5 years. He rubbed his forehead like he had a migraine, which, honestly, I hoped he did. I don't know what to say. Well, that's disappointing, I said. I figured someone with a doctorate would have a better vocabulary. He let out a long breath, looking about 2 seconds away from passing out. Peter, I swear, this was a mistake. I never meant for it to happen. Oh, wow, I said, nodding. That's such a great excuse. I might use it next time I accidentally push someone into oncoming traffic. He groaned and dropped into the stool next to the counter, rubbing his temples. It wasn't supposed to be like this. It just happened. I clapped my hands together. Well, that clears everything up. Things just happen. Gravity. Earthquakes. People cheating on their husbands with their dentists. Life is just one big spontaneous mess, huh? He looked absolutely miserable, which, honestly, was the best part of my day so far. I know you're angry. Oh, do you? I asked. Wow. Someone get this guy a trophy for most observant person in the room. He groaned again, like this was somehow his bad day. I messed up, Peter. I'll admit that. But please, don't take this out on Amanda. That was it. That was the moment I realized just how ridiculous this man was. Take this out on Amanda? I repeated, standing up. Oh, don't worry. Amanda's going to get her turn. But right now, I just wanted to come down here and see if the rumors were true. His face paled. What rumors? I leaned in, dropping my voice. That you're a complete fool. And with that, I grabbed my jacket, walked out, and left him sitting there, still holding the photo. I didn't need a dentist anymore. I needed a divorce lawyer. The drive home was uneventful, except for the part where I spent the entire time thinking about how to handle my next move. You'd think catching your wife with another man would come with a standard checklist. Step 1. Confront. Step 2. Yell. Step 3. Dramatic exit. But no, I had to be creative about it. Because if Amanda and Dr. Plaque Removal thought they could sneak around and insult my intelligence, they clearly had no idea who they were dealing with. By the time I pulled into the driveway, I had a plan. Not a good plan, necessarily, but one that would be a lot more satisfying than the usual sitcom confrontation where the husband asks why and the wife pretends to be conflicted. Amanda's car was in the driveway. Excellent. That meant she was home and completely unaware that I had just spent my afternoon exposing her dentist/boyfriend like a marshmallow over an open fire. I walked inside like it was any other day. The house was clean, because Amanda was the kind of person who thought dust was a personal insult. She was sitting on the couch with her laptop, looking like someone who hadn't just detonated our marriage for a guy who probably still used a flip phone. "Hey, Peter," she said without looking up. "Oh, hey, Amanda," I replied, dropping my keys onto the counter. "How was your day?" She made a non-committal noise, still typing. "Busy. Yours?" I smiled. "Oh, just fantastic. Really productive. Got some fresh air, ran some errands, saw my dentist." She didn't react. Not even a twitch. That's good. I leaned against the counter, watching her closely. Yeah, it was a really eye-opening appointment. Learned a lot of new information. That got her attention. She glanced up, brow slightly furrowed. Uh-huh. I grabbed a chair, spun it around, and sat on it backward like I was about to have a very serious cool teacher talk with a bunch of troubled students. "Amanda, I have a fun little riddle for you. Let's see if you can solve it." She closed the laptop, finally paying full attention. "Okay." I folded my hands together. "All right. Imagine you've been married for a few years. Everything seems fine. Then, out of nowhere, you find out your spouse has been sneaking around with someone else. But here's the twist. It's not some random stranger. It's someone who's been all up in your personal space for years. Someone who knows things about you. Someone you trusted." Amanda stared at me, her fingers gripping the edge of the couch cushion. "What are you talking about?" I clapped my hands together. Ding, ding, ding. "Congratulations, Amanda. You got the right answer. The person in question is my dentist." "How exciting. You must be so proud of yourself." To her credit, she kept a straight face. "Barely. Peter, I don't." I held up a hand. "Shoo. I'm not done yet. Let's keep playing. Next question. How does one react when their spouse has found out about their very special extracurricular activities? Deny, deny, deny. B. Try to turn it around and act like the victim. Or C. Sit in stunned silence, realizing they underestimated their husband's ability to connect the dots. She didn't answer. I nodded. Interesting choice. I personally would have gone with denial, but hey, I respect the strategy. Amanda took a slow breath, her expression shifting into something resembling damage control mode. "Peter, whatever you think is happening." "Oh, no need to sugarcoat it," I cut in. "I already had a lovely chat with Dr. Homewrecker. I gotta say, he was not at his best today. I think he may have accidentally bitten off more than he could chew." Pun intended. Amanda's face drained of color. I could see the wheels turning in her head, searching for some angle, some excuse, some way to make this not the worst conversation of her life. I gestured toward her laptop. "Go ahead, look up a guide on how to talk your way out of a fully documented affair." "I'll wait." She swallowed hard. "Peter, I shook my head. "Nope. No. Stop. This isn't the part where you explain. This is the part where I talk and you listen, because I've earned that much." She clenched her jaw but said nothing. I leaned forward. "You know what really bugs me? It's not even the cheating. Don't get me wrong, that's bad. Really bad. Spectacularly bad. But what gets me is who you picked. I mean, the dentist? That's like cheating on your husband with a foot doctor. There's no glamour, no thrill. It's just sad." She exhaled sharply. "Peter." I stood up, stretching like I had just completed a very satisfying exercise. "Well, anyway, now that we've gotten that out in the open, I think it's time for the next step. Her eyes narrowed. What next step? Oh, you'll see, I said, grabbing my phone. It's a surprise. And with that, I walked out of the room, leaving her sitting there, completely unprepared for what was coming next. Because if Amanda and Dr. Cavity thought this was going to be a quiet little scandal that would go away with some apologies and a few tears, they clearly didn't know who they were dealing with. Let the fun begin. Amanda was still sitting there, frozen, as I walked into the other room. She had the look of someone who just realized they left the stove on. Except in this case, the stove was her entire marriage, and I was the guy holding a fire extinguisher filled with sarcasm and bad intentions. I didn't need to hear her excuses. I wasn't interested in the usual, it didn't mean anything, or we were having problems, or I was going through a phase where I apparently make incredibly poor life choices. No, I had bigger plans, smarter plans, plans that would turn this entire situation into something I could actually enjoy. I picked up my phone and made the call. It rang twice before a voice answered. City Dental Clinic, how can I help you? I smiled. Hi, yeah. I was wondering if Dr. Miller has any openings this week. My wife highly recommended him. There was a pause, and I could almost hear the receptionist blinking in confusion. I believe he's fully booked this week, but I can schedule you for next. Oh, no worries, I said, keeping my voice casual. I actually just wanted to thank him for all the extra time he's put into taking care of my wife's oral health. Silence. Then, in a much more careful tone, I'm not sure I understand. I leaned against the counter, grinning. Oh, I think you do. But listen, if you could just pass along the message, I'd really appreciate it. Oh, and tell him Peter Lawson says hi. I hung up before she could respond. Step 1. Plant the seed of panic in Dr. Miller's workplace. Done. I walked back into the living room, where Amanda was still sitting on the couch, gripping her laptop like it was a life raft. Her expression had shifted from shocked to actively searching for a way out of this. Who were you calling? She asked, voice tight. I shrugged. Oh, just your favorite medical professional. Figured he'd want a heads up before things get really interesting. Amanda's face twitched. Peter, don't do this. I tilted my head. Do what, Amanda? Enlighten me. You know what I mean, she snapped. This doesn't have to be. Oh, but it does have to be, I cut in. Because you made it this way. See, you had options. Many options. If you were unhappy, you could have talked to me. If you were bored, you could have picked up a hobby. If you wanted to feel young again, I don't know, maybe go on a road trip or buy an expensive blender. But instead, you decided to have an adventure with the one man who has literally stuck dental instruments into my mouth. Amanda sighed, rubbing her temples. It's not that simple. Oh, really? I asked, sitting down across from her. Because it seems very simple from my side of things. Let's break it down, shall we? You betrayed me, you lied, and you very conveniently forgot to mention that every time I was in for a cleaning, the guy checking my gums was also checking in on my wife. That about sum it up? She exhaled through her nose. No, I interrupted, holding up a finger. I'm genuinely curious. What was the thought process here? Did you sit down one day and think, wow, you know what's missing from my life? A romantic fling with someone who literally knows how much plaque I build up in a year. Amanda clenched her jaw, which I had to admire, because wow, was that ironic, considering the circumstances. I didn't plan for this to happen, she finally said. Oh, well, that makes me feel so much better, I said, leaning back. Because as long as it wasn't planned, that totally erases the fact that it happened multiple times, in multiple places, and with a man who definitely isn't qualified to be doing that kind of drilling. She glared at me. Can you stop with the jokes for 1 second? I pretended to think about it. Nope. Sorry. Humor is how I process extreme stupidity. Amanda ran a hand through her hair, her frustration growing. Peter, listen. I know I messed up. Okay? I know. But if we could just... I held up a hand. Nope. Not doing the let's talk through it thing. That's not the show we're watching today. She stared at me, realizing for the first time that she wasn't in control of the situation. That was the thing about Amanda. She was used to managing things, smoothing things over, fixing things. But this wasn't something she could fix with a heartfelt apology and a sad expression. I stood up, stretching. Anyway, I just wanted to check in, make sure you knew that I knew. Now, I have some more calls to make. Her eyes narrowed. To who? I grinned. Oh, you'll find out soon enough. But let's just say, your life's about to get a lot more complicated. And with that, I walked toward the door, leaving Amanda sitting there, suddenly very, very concerned about what came next. Because if she thought this was over, she clearly had no idea who she was dealing with. Amanda sat there, gripping the couch like it was going to save her from the oncoming disaster, but I had already made up my mind. This wasn't going to be one of those pathetic, teary-eyed conversations where she tried to justify herself and I pretended to consider forgiveness. No, Amanda didn't get to play the sad and misunderstood role in this situation. She picked her path, and now it was time to watch her try to navigate it barefoot through a field of broken glass. I walked past her, phone still in hand, scrolling through my contacts until I found the next person who deserved to be in on the fun. I pressed call, turned to look at Amanda, and gave her a little wave before stepping into the other room. Hey, Mom, I said as the line picked up. Amanda's head snapped toward me so fast I thought she might get whiplash. Peter, my mom chirped. You never call during the week. What's up? Oh, nothing much. Just found out Amanda's been seeing someone else. Thought you'd like to know before the whole family barbecue this weekend. There was a sharp inhale, then complete silence. Then, the sound of something being slammed down onto a counter. She what? I smiled. Yup. Thought I should get ahead of it before Amanda has to awkwardly explain why she and my dentist have been spending so much extra time together. You know, just in case she planned on pulling the "we just got close as friends" routine. Oh, that witch? Mom, I cut in. Language. She huffed. Don't language me, Peter. I knew something was off about her last Thanksgiving. She was acting weird. I told you. I sighed. Mom, you think every woman who doesn't immediately help you set the table is acting weird. Yes, but this time I was right. Fair enough. Listen, I continued. I just wanted to make sure you knew before she starts trying to spin some dramatic story about making mistakes and finding herself, and whatever other nonsense people say when they get caught being terrible. Mom let out a long, satisfied exhale. Oh, don't worry. I'll handle this. Amanda had stood up at some point and was now pacing. Peter, come on, don't. I held up a finger. Shoo. Mom's processing. My mom, now fully in battle mode, asked the most important question. What's your plan? Oh, I'm glad you asked, I said, grinning at Amanda. Because I'm just getting started. After a few more minutes of my mom gleefully plotting how she was going to subtly let this information slip into every family group chat, I hung up and turned back to my soon-to-be ex-wife. Her arms were crossed, her face a mix of anger and nervous energy. Peter, this isn't funny. I raised my eyebrows. Oh, I think it's hilarious. You're just trying to humiliate me, she snapped. Yeah, I said, nodding. That's kind of the point. You get how this works, right? You make an absolute joke out of our marriage. I make an absolute joke out of you. Balance. She groaned, rubbing her temples. You're being childish. Oh, I'm being childish? I repeated, pretending to think it over. Right, because I'm the one sneaking around with a man who, up until last week, I trusted with my dental hygiene. Her face turned red. I made a mistake. No, you made several mistakes, I corrected. And fun fact, you still are. I grabbed my laptop off the counter, plopped down on the couch, and started typing. Amanda took a cautious step closer, eyeing the screen like it might explode. What are you doing? She asked, voice suspicious. Oh, just checking a few things, I said casually. Looking up divorce lawyers. Reading up on property division laws. Oh, and filing a lovely little review for Dr. Miller's dental practice. Her eyes widened. Peter, don't. I glanced up at her. Oh, but why not? I really want to share my customer experience. I turned the laptop toward her so she could read it herself. 1-star review. Dr. Miller is a dentist who truly goes above and beyond for his patients, especially if that patient happens to be your wife. His chairside manner is exceptional, and if you're lucky, he might even provide some extra services that aren't covered by insurance. 5 stars for enthusiasm, but 1 star for professionalism. Would not recommend unless you enjoy surprise expenses and marital distress. Amanda let out a strangled noise. Peter, you cannot post that. I clicked submit. She threw her hands in the air. Are you insane? Potentially, I admitted. But it's too late to worry about that now, isn't it? Amanda looked like she was 2 seconds away from a breakdown, which, honestly, felt fantastic after everything she had put me through. I shut my laptop and stood up. Anyway, I think that about wraps things up. You should probably start packing. Her expression dropped. What? I gestured around the house. Well, one of us is leaving, and it's definitely not going to be me. So unless you and your dentist have suddenly developed a shared interest in interior decorating, I suggest you figure out your next move. She just stood there, speechless. You thought this was going to be some sad, dramatic thing, didn't you? I said, shaking my head. You thought I'd cry, or beg, or do something pathetic while you got to feel like the complicated and misunderstood one in all this. Her jaw tightened. Well, sorry to disappoint, I continued, but that's not happening. You don't get to cheat on me and then have me be the one who suffers. You chose this, so now you can deal with it. She took a deep breath. Peter, please, can we at least talk about this? I patted her on the shoulder as I walked past her toward the stairs. Oh, Amanda, we just did. And with that, I left her standing there, knowing full well that her nice, neat, cheat on your husband and move on plan had just crashed and burned in the most spectacular way possible. The revenge was over. Now it was time to move on. Without her, Amanda was still standing there, her mouth slightly open like she wanted to argue, but couldn't quite figure out where to start. That was the thing about people like her. They were great at making choices in secret, but when you flipped the lights on and made them deal with the mess they created, they suddenly became very confused about how actions had consequences. I wasn't in the mood to babysit her emotional crisis. Upstairs, I grabbed a bag, stuffed it with a few things, and headed back down. Amanda was pacing now, biting her nails, the universal sign of someone desperately trying to find an escape route from a situation they didn't think would turn on them. Where are you going? She asked, watching me put on my jacket. I smirked. Oh, don't worry. I'm not leaving. Just giving you some time to collect your things without me standing here, making it awkward for you. Her arms crossed. Peter, be serious. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, you want serious? All right, here's serious. I want you out. You're an adult, you made a choice, and now you get to live with it. But you don't get to live with me. She let out a sharp breath. I have nowhere to go. I tilted my head. That is fascinating, considering you had somewhere to go when you were sneaking around with my dentist. Maybe he has a couch. Her face twisted into something between frustration and disbelief. So that's it? You're just throwing away our marriage? I laughed. Oh, I'm throwing it away? That's adorable, Amanda. Truly. Do you hear yourself? Her lips parted like she had a response, but nothing came out. I checked my watch. Look, I don't really have time for the "why are you doing this to me?" act. You packed your morals into a carry-on bag the second you decided sneaking around was more interesting than actually respecting your vows. You don't get to be shocked that I'm not interested in pretending everything is fine. She sighed, rubbing her temples. Can't we at least talk about this when we're both calmer? Oh, I'm calm, I said. I'm probably the calmest I've ever been, actually, because for the first time in a while, I know exactly what I want. She swallowed hard. And what's that? I picked up my keys and headed for the door. A life without you. She flinched, like she hadn't actually expected to hear it out loud. But I wasn't going to sugarcoat it. I stopped before stepping outside. You have until tomorrow to get your things. After that, anything left behind goes in the trash or on eBay. Choose wisely. And with that, I walked out, shutting the door behind me. Amanda had spent months making me feel like I was the one who didn't see what was happening in my own marriage. She had made me question my instincts, my trust, my belief that we were on the same team. But now, I was done. Done making excuses for her. Done letting her rewrite the story to make herself the victim. Done pretending that any part of this was salvageable. By the time I got to my car, my phone was buzzing. A text from my mom. Just told your Aunt Susan. She's thriving off this drama. Call me when you're free. I smiled. At least some good was coming out of this. I had no idea what was next for me, but one thing was certain. Whatever it was going to be a whole lot better than the disaster I just walked away from. The extraction was complete. And unlike Amanda, I was finally free. The end. Thanks for watching. Rate the story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel.